Starting in three, two, one. Sup? How are things?
Not much.
Nothing.
Good. Good.
Um,
Just do same old, same.
Same old, same old. That's good to hear. If you don't know who I am, I'm Kai Davis, or Kai Lulu Davis. I'm the founder and lead creative director at Far Off Studios, and I am lucky to be presenting to you all Liam Newsom. You want to tell a little bit about yourself, Liam?
Yeah, for sure. So I am the music director here at Far Owl Studios. I've been on the team for how long? Maybe 4 or 5 months, I think. Is it?
No, 7.
Has it been 7? Wow.
Yeah, you came
But,
on in like December, I think.
yeah, but I'm part of this online studio here, and I've been making music for like I think. Well, I started a while back in grade school, right? But
Holy shit.
since then, actually making music like electronically, I've been doing that for about 4 years
Oh, nice.
now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, do you want to say like what country you're from, or you
Yeah,
want?
sure. I'm from Canada. I'm in this little city called Guelph, which is, no, but it's kind of like southern Ontario.
That's cool.
I've
That's
always
cool.
lived. I lived in Toronto when I was younger for a bit, but then we moved here to Guelph. But I'd love to
Nice.
go back in. It's great.
Nice. Nice.
Arts community's great there.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just the idea of coming from a small hometown. Well, how large is that city?
Guelph or
Yeah,
Toronto?
Guelph.
Guelph, it's pretty small, but it's not. It's not like city. I'd say it's like suburban almost. But like it has it's a pretty small population, but there's a lot of culture here, right? Some of the other bigger, but like the amount of shows and different things you can do in Guelph, it's pretty strong. Like I'm pretty sure it's pretty highly uprated on like nice, but it's a smaller place, but it's a good place to live in Canada, that's for sure.
That's cool.
Lots of lots of greens, lots of like trees and stuff. It looks really nice.
It's just like I gotta look that city up because where I
Yeah, yeah.
live, because where I live, like Northern Virginia, all there
Uh-huh.
are is just like military people, bureaucrats, and contractors. There's
Yeah, I
like
put the opposite as well.
there's literally zero to no um entertainment industry. You got to go down to like the little pocket of either have to go up into Maryland where like Firaxis is, or go down into Raleigh, North Carolina. Am I getting that
Where is
right?
that actually in America? Like my geography sucks. Are you like southern?
So I'm literally right smack dab in the middle of the Eastern
Oh,
Seaboard.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like an hour south of DC.
Have you
Yeah,
been there like your whole
the DC.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been there plenty of times.
Okay.
There's a lot of awesome stuff happening there, but it's just all government stuff. And like
Yeah,
eh. But anyways, let's get right into it. What do you do in Fox? Like maybe just introduce yourself to some people, introduce people to like what you do and like all that stuff.
well, I do make music. I don't do sound, plus I haven't really learned sound yet, but I'd love to do it on other projects. I'd love to get into sound designing, but I mainly just make a lot of the tracks. I think the other Paula, he does a lot more ambient stuff. I do some of the more like upbeat kind of combat tracks and some of the main themes and things like that. So we've been Paula's theme. We've been working on that one. Right now I'm just doing some combat tracks. And just for the sound of the game, right? Because we have the converted and the non-converted. So really sounds between the two, I guess, forces of the game has been so I had to spend a lot of time really trying to get that down. But it's an interesting project. A lot of lore to the game, obviously, and there's a lot to think about. So it's not just about the music and me using my skills. It's also using my skills as a artist person to really take a look at this game and see what is this. It's not just about how do I make a combat track, how do I make it this kind of track, right? It's about understanding attention to detail in the game and in the plot and all that, and trying to reflect that through the music, right?
Mm, yeah, it's like one of the coolest things about game development is that it's just
Yeah, for
this
sure.
weird, it's this really big weird synthesis of um how
Some
do
of the
I even
sounds
explain
that I'm trying to get
music,
I'm looking for is really
like music, gameplay, and all that stuff. It's genuinely, it's like it's insane, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you don't have like pure unfiltered just music, but rather it is a combination of everything to create this like unique experience that probably people before was like were like, how's that even possible? You can't combine music and film and all that stuff into one thing. Music
Mm.
and interactable film and so forth. And then yeah, it, I like I don't know, man. I can try to put it into words, but that sort of like magic of video games. It's that
Mm.
inexplicable, timeless interactability with them. You
I
know?
feel like video games are such an interesting form of art or media, whatever you want to call it, because you have so many elements to it, right? You have music, you have the visuals, uh, right, which is like a whole thing within itself, and then you have story. Like there's so many different ways to do it, right? And I feel like because games haven't think of things like movies or like visual art or even music, right? These
Hmm.
forms of art have been around for so long, right? But video games are rather new, and when they first started out, they're entertainment, but now we have access to things like online studios and you can connect people from all around the world. Like the potential for the types of games that can be created, you get the right where you have all these indie games coming out, and like you really start to see video games as more of an art form than just a source of entertainment. It's more
Hmm.
than just some kind of way to appreciating a piece of art almost.
Yeah, it's I mean I think like we can especially look at if we want to talk a little bit about video games, I think we can especially look at games like Hellblade.
I haven't
That's
heard of it. I don't know too much about video games. I've always played them when I was younger and stuff, but
mhm.
recently I just haven't really played through too much stuff because I've just been busy with music. But I want to
Yeah,
play the games definitely.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like as like the creative director, I should be playing video games because it's like it's my art, and I got to practice it and see how
Yeah,
others are
for
doing
sure.
it.
You gotta see it before.
There's a so the game Hellblade. I haven't played it, and I really want to play it, but I sometimes worry that my PC is gonna fry, despite me having G a NVIDIA 1070. Is that what it's called? I don't even know. But I have like a
Right.
1070 graphics card, and I still feel like my computer is going to fry because that game is such a it's built in the Unreal Engine, and it's and the crazy thing about it is that it's so realistic, and it's such a realistic stylized game. And and like there's just this general conception that like, oh, if you're going to go realistic, you're not going to have any style. And I'm like, not really. You can have a style in realistic, a realistic stylized style. I think that just general impression came from like games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, all the
Mm.
realistic first person shooters. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
And like and it's and and sometimes and like don't get me wrong, those are like graphical achievements,
Hmm.
but like going to your point of video games becoming more than entertainment, I think that just I think we've always first seen it as entertainment, and like yeah, some of the first games were entertaining games
Yeah.
because there wasn't as much framework, not as many possibilities to implement audio, visuals, complex visuals, and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Like big games and stuff, you're like
Hmm.
pretty limited by your hardware that you're working with, right?
Yeah, but then like especially in like what the last 10 years, yeah, the last 10 years, not even that. Probably I would argue probably around the last 20 years, we've been seeing like more and more stylized games.
Mhm.
Like there's a you, you know about the game Okami, right?
Heard of it.
Heard of it? Yeah. You should honestly like take a listen to its soundtrack. It's a
Yeah.
yeah, it is a traditional Japanese soundtrack. It isn't anything like modern day Japanese music, but rather
Okay, cool. They want that authenticity kind of thing.
yeah, that authenticity, and like they
Yeah.
adapted it to the game in its like various instances.
Is it
And
like fused with like electronic elements or like
no,
modern kind of? It's like
no,
entirely
it is
all like old.
all instruments, dude.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like it's got that yo,
I
that yo. I don't know. I don't even know what that is, but
don't know what the names are for a lot of those instruments, but
it's music has just been constantly evolving and like branching over into the virtual setting of like making this music. What's it like? What is it like me saying, "Hey, at this mark, fix this"? Well, I don't say it like that, hopefully, but like I just sometimes don't even. Whenever I try to listen to the music after 5 listens, it's just I get really tired. What is it like just sitting there and working on this virtual environment?
the virtual environment in terms of like our studio space or the virtual environment in terms of my DAW, like an FL Studio.
Yeah, yeah, both, honestly.
Okay. Well, in FL, when I'm working on, because I that's FL Studio is the DAW that I use. You know, some people
Hmm.
say
Hey,
FL
what's a
Studio.
DAW? It's just for our
Oh yeah,
audience.
digital audio workstation. It's basically just like
Hmm.
think of like it's like a Photoshop but for audio. It just allows you to make music,
Yeah.
do whatever you want with audio, and put all your sounds and all that stuff.
Okay.
But
Yeah, yeah.
FL Studio, people say it's not great for like producing game music or stuff like. I've been using it for so long. If it's not broke, then don't fix it. But maybe one day I'll switch to Ableton or something. But
Mm, I like
but
that.
working in it's definitely with a classical background, right? I used to use like I don't know, some people listening might know MuseScore or other notation software, and I would just do MIDI playback to get into making music. But switching to a DAW, just the way you have to think about music is so much different, right? Because you're using a piano roll and you're using like a place where you're just placing that right instead of writing it out, and it's harder to think in terms of those almost musical paradigms in which you thought of things before when you first started out as a classical musician. But having helpful for me to really understand just kind of how electronic music or making music electronically works. But when you're listening back to something like that and getting feedback, it can be tricky when because Kai, as you say, you'll listen back to things many times, right? And it's
Hmm.
for me, it's almost like if I'm listening to something, the first time I listen to something, I'll be able to hear it properly. I'll be able to haven't heard it so many times. But when I'm working on something and I keep hearing it back, right? You go ear blind. It's like those Febreze commercials. I don't know if you've seen them where they like say you go nose blind to smell in
Yeah,
your room or
yeah.
whatever. You go ear blind to your music, right? But I find the best thing to do in that case is to just go do something else for a bit and come back and listen to it. And you get a more accurate perception. But it also
Hmm.
just comes down to, especially with Far All Studios, especially with this game, where the music is to the nature of the complexity of the game itself and the story and the lore. Where if I'm working on something, it takes a lot of tries, right? Because now I'm still trying to get really familiar with this game because there's a lot to get familiar with, right?
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of the feedback I get, it's not always in terms of sound finished or this doesn't sound. It's not really like a technical thing like that. It's more of just the way Kai, the way I find you often think about things is in terms of the remind you of the converted. Does this remind you of the feeling I want the player to have? You know,
Hmm.
where it's all about that attention to detail, right? So sometimes integrating feedback, like for the sound lullaby-ish, but then it's like, well, how the hell do you make something sound lullaby-ish? When I think of a lullaby, I think of like babies. So it's like, like on like Twinkle Twinkle Little stuff, right? Where
Hmm.
you and it like when I'm using strings in a vocalist, it's hard because then I have to think about the musical elements of a lullaby, and like I don't really know what that is researching there. So some of the feedback, it's not something directly like, okay, maybe turn this instrument down a bit, or sometimes I get stuff like that, but a lot of it is more, which is more of a challenge, but I think it creates a more interesting result when it's properly kind of gone through.
Yeah.
When we tweak something to the sound that we want to get, sure, it does take longer, but I think it really helps to have the directors kind of, and for him to almost use my musical skills as his own instrument in a way. It's almost like the music that you want to have for this game, Kai, you're using and you're trying to direct me. It's almost like you're playing a video game with all these other people, part of the team, right? Where you know how you want the music to sound, and you kind of use my skills and give me videos, give me like references and stuff like that, and then I make the track there. And I think a lot of the times people give, they'll tell the music director, they'll give them stuff like that. But I think this project is very focused, and I think it takes a lot of work to get the tracks done. But I think that stuff. I think we're gonna make some cool stuff.
Yeah. How long? How many iterations do you think we go through in our work?
It really depends. Like
Shit,
it
dude.
follows like the one
Didn't we get?
focus something which is like a theme for a character where there's a lot you have to take into consideration because you have to go through what are the aspects of this, what's their backstory, what do they look like, how does this all tie in musically. But if I'm just doing a more ambient track or something that's going to be more in the background, there's less to take into consideration.
Hmm. Yeah. Before we go on, I think your
Yeah.
mic's cutting in and out.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately,
Is that the push to talk or
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Man, you just like you should probably activate push to talk. Probably it's your
I've been
voice
using
and
push to talk, but
hmm. You should probably
I've been
use
slowing
switch over.
down my build.
You should just switch over to voice, and all you're doing that. I'll weigh in a little bit. How many? I think
You want
like
me to switch to voice activity
yeah, I've switched to voice activity.
in the voice channel?
Is push to talk in the voice channel. God damn it. Okay. Anyways, um, so how many times do you think we go through? Um, how many times do you think we go through, like, say, for Stallo's theme? So, like, did we go through like 10 iterations or something like that?
I have put my push to talk back on because it's still a push to talk channel. And 10, maybe. I think that's a bit much. I think it was like 7. I think it was quite a bit.
It was still a lot,
It was still a lot, but
and
I was
we're
also going through it and finishing the track because it
yeah,
wasn't
we're not even
anything
done with
major.
it either.
Yeah.
Like we often like um we what I like to do with you guys is that like okay, we have a rough idea. It's just exactly what like imagine like you sit down at the tracks often. You sit at the tracks and you're kind of like your mind kind of goes numb and you're like I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I need to move on to something else. That's what we
Mhm.
essentially do. I like to call it, put it on the back burner, and then like we work on another track and we work on another track and so forth. Um, yeah, and like it allows us to have like an already established like melody and all that stuff. But like later on in production, it gets finished. Um, yeah, I mean like so yeah, and like this actually ties in perfectly well and like into like what's your methodology like I mean I can just sitting around at that computer like just listening to the same thing like just one specific thing I don't know how you guys do it. it I yeah.
I feel like it's like any art, like a painting at their painting, and I think it's good to take breaks, especially like when you're finding it hard to focus on stuff. It's good you do, right? Like playing
Hmm.
instruments and even other things that might not even be music, right? Just other things that you're into doing, right? So that you have other ways to get inspiration, because when you don't, sometimes you just have to get yourself to do it. And it's like, okay, whatever. If that's what you have to do, then you do it. But when you're inspired to work on something and you have that idea, that the process of out really will help you and really helps, to really get something, right? So when I'm going to work on some stuff for this game here, right? I'll listen back to the reference track, kind of like I'll hear an idea of a song in my head, I'll just hear it
Hmm.
mentally, right? Then I'll try and get that into the DAW. I'll try and get that out, and that I think yeah, listening back to things over and over again can be challenging, but it's something you kind of just get used to the more you make music, and you just
Hmm.
learn to kind of and trust your judgment when you kind of go do something else and come back and listen to something, that you're able to kind of listen back to it and get a clear.
Yeah. Um
Do you feel like when you're like, cuz with this game you're the director, do any like coding or anything? What exactly do you do in the game?
So what I'm responsible for is that so what I do is that imagine me like a librarian, a
Okay.
curator essentially. And so so you could essentially imagine my role as a sort of filter where I take inputs from everyone on the team, including the music producers, the artists, the programmers, and I look at it and I say to myself, how does this improve? Does this improve the gameplay experience that I want people to play through the team's game? And like how that relates to the music is that I have to think music in a sort of you need to think music in sort of a augmenting an augmenter to the experience already. Hey there. Hate to cut it short, but this content is usually for our patrons on our Patreon page at the $20 tier. If you subscribe at that tier, you get access to the other 40 minutes of this podcast where we talk about working in the music industry and its future. Along with that, you get development insights where you get to see what's happening at our studio and some of the cool things that's being developed with our game Ethereal Metropolis, scrap posts of old ideas, and so much more. So head on over to our Patreon page linked down below and make sure to subscribe to the $20 tier.